Hey guys, welcome to this week's podcast episode. And our guest today, coming out of Las Vegas, Nevada, David Whitting. And he streams, he creates content around blockchain. He's enthusiastic about the implications, potential impacts of blockchain, AI. We'll talk a little bit about how finances work on the blockchain as well as Bitcoin, his thoughts on that. I'm really happy to have him on the show. David, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes.
Thank you, Christopher.
Yeah. Introduce yourself and we'll dive
Great.
right in.
Great. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Like you said, I'm from Las Vegas and New York also. So I'm a transplant from New York. And what I'm doing is trying to educate people about blockchain, AI, and cryptocurrency through my podcast, Building the Blockchain podcast. Been doing it for a few years now, and we have over 20 episodes with different guests that come on the podcast. My background is in accounting, and what made me excited about blockchain and cryptocurrencies and tokenization was the ability of the immutable ledger. So I got interested and involved in blockchain around 2017.
Yeah.
Around the end of 2017, I started to get involved with the blockchain, doing some different education and going to different events and educating myself, meeting people face to face.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. I think a lot of people got introduced through in 2017. That was when the price of Bitcoin went from 1,000 to 20,000 and then crashed back down to 3,000. And yeah, which is really interesting. You're talking about, you had some interesting ideas where you talked about the immutable ledger. Everything's been a ledger, but talk about how AI is transforming. Because recently there was a article about the first AI to AI crypto transaction on the blockchain, which is going to be really interesting because now that its potential impacts.
Yes, and that's what blockchain can do, has the capability to have AI to AI transactions, which is amazing. But it can be done all through smart contracts. So when you put a smart contract on the blockchain, you're giving very specific instructions in that contract. And you can also program into that contract triggers and different limits and different balances in different accounts. So when an account goes to a certain amount, then that account can be moved, all the assets can be moved from one account to another once that trigger goes through. And the AI on the other side can accept it, or a human being can accept it. Yeah, it's a lot of things that are going on, and AI is really starting to really make blockchain really fit into a lot of plans in finance, healthcare, and different areas of business.
And you mentioned, I think, one of the big areas, because originally we're seeing like basically all these destruction of industries and it's hitting media, it's hitting finance. It is slightly introduced to healthcare, but I think healthcare is regulated and so bureaucratic that that's going to be the next. First it was finance, then it's going to be healthcare, education. For healthcare, talk about some of the potential applications of blockchain, AI, and even where do you see like
Yeah.
Bitcoin? I hate using crypto, but where do you see Bitcoin fitting into this?
Yeah. What? Yeah, Bitcoin is like a separate issue, but we can talk about that and how that will work. And I'm excited how Bitcoin will be coming to Las Vegas next year, the Bitcoin conference, so we can talk about that in the next segment. But I think what the best thing for healthcare right now is that the medical records management is something where the blockchain and AI using medical records management in doctors' offices, for instance, if you can take, and I know someone who's trying to work on a project that's similar to something like be able to take the medical records. And I know that a lot of doctors don't have the greatest handwriting in the world. So if you can come out with a standard of getting all the prescriptions and all the doctor's notes put in medical records and manage it correctly, then it can really streamline and really save a lot of time. So that's one way that healthcare can be adopted, and I think it's going to have to come from the everyday use and the ways that and it has to come from the doctors and the physicians in the office that are interacting with the patients every day, or it's not going to be able to work. I know, like you're saying, there's a lot of moving parts in healthcare, but I think if we just start with the doctors and the patient relationships and how blockchain can improve and streamline there, I think that's a great way to do things and move forward. There can be test cases in different cities that can be developed. And standard, that's where usually things go. And then pharmaceuticals, it can really help out in the pharmaceutical industry also. It can make sure that the drugs are authentic and they're on the chain and they're being prescribed correctly with the correct amounts. And then that can all be, traced on the blockchain, that there's not overdosage, overusage, because then there can be triggers that the blockchain and AI can see if a certain drug is not being used correctly and prescribed correctly. There's different ways that I think healthcare can adopt a blockchain the next, say, 2 to 5 years.
Yeah. Next question I have for you is the problem with healthcare with the Epic electronic health records is you go to one hospital, and then it's really hard to move around between hospitals because you have to start all over. And so there's this big problem of interoperability. So,
Mhm.
how do you envision like the blockchain and healthcare interoperability to get what you were describing
Okay.
previously?
Right. Okay. That's where maybe some of the tokenization can come in, that we're talking about Bitcoin, and we're talking about different things like Bitcoin and tokenization and the token part, because a lot of tokens now are going to multi-chain. So a lot of processes now and a lot of infrastructure projects that are in blockchain and AI right now are focusing on multi-chain capabilities. So I can see those ideas being adopted into the healthcare industry also, because it's similar where there's a multi-chain aspect to it. Pretty similar if you have different types of coins and different types of tokens, how can they be interchanged with each other? And different platforms too, different layers. I don't want to get too technical. There's Solana, and then there's Cardano, and then there's Bitcoin, then there's Ethereum. So how do they all work together with each other? And that's what multi-chain is about. So that's similar what the healthcare industry faces, those same things. And I think that's where Bitcoin can help out.
Interesting. I know
Yeah.
this hypothetical scenario is a lot of hospital CEOs and then you've got maybe like United, Aetna, Humana, these executives, they're listening to this and they're like, yeah, we're not going to do that. We've done healthcare for the last 100 years. We accrue all the value and we're not going to change. And we've got the government behind their back. We've got big players. We've got media. So it's interesting, like tokenization and multi-chain and all of that, but you've got these big players there that
Yeah.
we're not doing
Yeah.
that.
The insurance industry, right? Yeah. The elephant in the room. Yeah. The insurance industry. Yeah. Nothing goes by without being approved by insurance. Yeah. So either whether it's single payer, multi-payer, yeah, it's something where those challenges, like I said, can have to be adopted. And I think that's where the testing out and using test cases and having test hospitals and test cities, so that we just don't try to blast everything all at one time, so that the insurance industry is very reluctant to change. And I think only by doing testing in different locations in different parts of the US, and maybe something in the Northeast and then something in the South and something in the West, and then doing some test incubator states. I think maybe that would be one way to help the insurance industry and government overcome some of these complaints and resistance to change. Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, what's interesting is I think while you were saying that, I think three people that came to mind that could possibly make a dent are Mark Cuban, because he's got the startup with the trying to compete with the pharmaceuticals. And then you've got Jeff Bezos, because you start to see the Amazon Medical, which is they failed in a couple of early startups to compete with the healthcare industry, which shows you like how big this problem is. But Amazon, and then the dark horse is Elon Musk. He's got all
Yeah.
these crazy
Yeah.
ideas and he's not
Yeah.
afraid. Where do you see Tesla and
Yeah.
these players in blockchain and AI?
Yeah. That one thing I was going to bring up was the next thing. Yeah, is what Elon Musk is very good at, and also Jeff Bezos is supply chain management. So managing the supply chain of prescriptions and all the different types of medical records that are subject to HIPAA regulations. I think it's really good that there's some people that are out there that we can use some of the examples that they have, because Tesla and their supply chain and their technology can be brought into the healthcare industry. And like you said, what Jeff Bezos is doing is undertaking, trying to do drug delivery. And I see more and more of it right now. And you just see when you're on the road, you just see all the Amazon trucks you're going by that go by. So they're delivering so many different packages. So yeah, there's a supply chain management, and that part I think would be something where we can use from the private industry, and using technology and I think can accelerate to get the government on board.
Interesting. I know we have a couple minutes left, and I love just tossing out ideas. And this idea of Bitcoin from a early idea now to a major asset class, where do you see Bitcoin playing a role besides financial? Because you talked about Bitcoin potentially playing a role in healthcare, which is that's very out there. But how do you see Bitcoin playing in these different?
I was saying Bitcoin from the idea of the mechanics of Bitcoin can be translated. I'm not sure if people are really ready to pay in Bitcoin yet, but I'm just talking about the way that Bitcoin is structured, and the decentralization aspect of it is something that is very powerful, that can be adopted into different industries. And you're seeing that happen more and more now, especially like you said, finance is really in the forefront, and that's really coming up in the forefront. Finance is really adopting it because it relates to crypto, and now institutions are starting to adopt and putting like 2% of their funds. And since Bitcoin is the largest part of the market, it's still over 50% of all coins, and people trust and know Bitcoin. I think, that's why you want to just keep that discussion and keep it simple. And then you can talk about altcoins later, but I think something as a radical and something as trying to bring on adoption like Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, I think you just have to try to stick to a few different topics and a few different items that people can hang on to and relate to. I think Bitcoin is going to keep moving up. Now, there's going to be ups and downs to it. Nothing ever goes straight up. Right now, it's in a holding pattern, and it's starting just to be in a holding pattern, and we'll see where it breaks out. But I think it's probably going to break out pretty soon. Between now and probably the beginning of the year, there's going to be another move up. But it's just speculation, of course, and I don't recommend that you don't put in as much as you think you can lose. But you have to start somewhere. I think it's putting just a little bit in and doing a little bit of research as something where people, once you start putting $50 in, you can start tracing and tracking it, and then you can start seeing the power of the applications and what's going on with it, because there's been a lot of things that have been going on. It's not just for tokens. Now it's for Bitcoin ordinals are coming into place. So now you're having NFTs and things that are on the Ethereum chain now can be on the Bitcoin chain. So it's pretty exciting time for all different tokens.
Yeah. One kind of question for me is, first I followed the Bitcoin, Ethereum, and then now the kind of the emerging is Solana. What are your thoughts? What's the next? What's the next one? At Avalanche? I'm just
It's hard to see what what the next one is. I've been just trying to keep my eye out on Solana. I think Solana I think still has room to grow, and there's some ones that I just try to stick with. I don't try to venture out with too many different types of coins. But no, Litecoin is another good coin that's out there. Litecoin is something that I have a little bit of myself. But I think when Ripple and Ripple and XRP is another one that now that they have been judged by the SEC. And now Ripple has a way to grow and move forward. I think maybe you can take a look at some of these coins that were scrutinized by the SEC now they're getting permission to create ETFs and create different tools for investors. Those are the tokens I think really to take a look at it and keep an eye on, as like I was saying, the institutions are starting to put some money into things like Bitcoin ETFs and Ethereum ETFs. So those are some of the tokens that you have to keep your eye on that are getting adopted by institutions that will have a future to move forward and grow.
Yeah. And again, this is not financial advice. We're just
Of
brainstorming.
course.
Uh, you know,
Yes.
so always do
Yes.
your research. And
Yes.
how can people find out more about you, check out your podcast, see your work, etc.?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So it's Building the Blockchain podcast, and it's around on Spotify, Apple, wherever you can find podcasts, you'll find our podcast. We have some great people on during the years that we had who work with us in the space of startups and who are investors and different types of people that we've had on the podcast. We've been working to now bring a video aspect to the podcast. So we're doing more live streaming on StreamYard and different and YouTube, and the different streaming will have more coming up soon. So we're adding more to the podcast, and we're adding more topics in the future. And because there's so many different topics to talk about, we want to try to make sure that we're expanding more. And so you'll hear more about the different topics that we have coming up in our podcast.
Interesting. And excellent. And for all the audience, let's thank David for coming on and just an interesting brainstorming session. And be sure to check his socials, give him a follow. And thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. You can check out our podcast, and thanks for having me on. Appreciate it. Have a good day.